Check, 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 check. Check, check. Let's see. Check, check, check. Okay, we're good. Beep. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Making the Call. I am Andrew, and I am actually going to be doing the podcast all by myself tonight. Or I guess this morning at the time when you're listening to this. The rest of the guys, they couldn't be on this week because of various reasons. So I'm holding down the fort all by myself. We'll be going through all of the big takeaways from NFL Week 15. And because it's just me, we'll even stick around at the end, talk about the Rangers offseason, talk a little bit about the Mavs and their start to the season and expectations for them and things like that. So you just get all Andrew for this week's episode of Making the Call. But before we get into the episode, let me give our lovely listeners an update on how our weekly bets contest has been going. So if you are new here, me and the other four hosts of Making the Call, we have a weekly bet contest throughout the NFL season where we each make one bet a week. It's either the spread, over-under, or a player prop. And whoever gets last place is going to have to do a 1-hour solo podcast all by themselves after the football season. And we actually decided this past week that we're going to do a separate picks contest during the playoffs. And whoever gets last place during that has to do a 15-minute intro to the solo podcast. So if the same person gets last place in both, now they're doing a 75-minute solo podcast. Or if it's someone else, then it'll be 15 minutes from one person and an hour from someone else. So let's see. Trent, Austin, and myself all got our picks right. It took all of overtime for me to get TJ Hawkinson over receiving yards, but it did hit. Rosie missed Lamar Jackson over 20.8 fantasy points by like 1.3 points. Bad beat there. And then Alex rode with Danny DeVito, who got hurt for the Giants. And so he missed out on his pick of Giants +6 versus the Saints. So what that means, Trent is in first place with 1 point, or with 10 points. Then I'm in second place with 9. Alex is in third place with 8. Rosie is in fourth place with 7. And Austin in last with 6. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So Austin is now 1 point back from Rosie, 2 points back from Alex with 3 weeks to go. So it just got a lot more interesting with Austin winning this past week and Rosie losing. What we've decided to do is whenever we get down to week 18, if Austin and Rosie or Alex are within 1 point of each other, they each have to pick a bet from the noon slate in week 18. And if after the noon slate, if they both are tied, then they both will have to make separate bets on Monday Night Football, or not Monday Night Football, sorry, Sunday Night Football, sweating it out all the way till the very end to figure out who's going to be the winner. So that's what we've got going on week 18. That's how the bets contest is going on. Before we get into the rest of the episode, a couple more things. Making the Call Substack, make sure you're subscribed to that. We've got our Friday football newsletters coming out every single Friday. I did a big preview of all the best games from NFL Week 15, did keys to the game, and I think a lot of them ended up kind of coming to fruition. I didn't get all the picks right, but in terms of what I thought was going to be big impacts in those matchups, I think we ended up seeing on this past weekend. So Austin talked about Texas and Alabama this past week and kind of their case to be national champions in college football. Rosie updated his wide receiver rankings in Dynasty. If you're a big fantasy nut like we are here at Making the Call, definitely go check that out. And then Trent had his player props and Alex had his parlay. So we'll have kind of more of the same. A big newsletter coming up this Friday, especially as we just wind down in the NFL season. Only 3 weeks left to go. All right, finally, one last thing before we get into the episode. Let me tell you about our friends at Liquid IV. I've been kind of, I've been bad about putting their ad earlier in the episode. I've been waiting until the end to do it, but I'm not doing that this week because they deserve way more than that. We love Liquid IV. They've been a great sponsor of the show. They've been a great partner for us. We wouldn't be partnered with them if we didn't personally enjoy their product, which all five of us do. All five of us enjoyed Liquid IV. Trent loves that sea berry. Austin loves the acai berry. I like the hydration multiplier with the immune support, especially this time of year. The sugar-free line, it's all great. So we love Liquid IV here. You can go try Liquid IV today, and you can use promo code MTC for 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MTC at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using code MTC at liquidiv.com. All right. Let's see. We are now, little over 4 minutes into the podcast. If you noticed, I went a little long on the programming reminders because, to be quite honest with you, I was just trying to delay the inevitable, and that is talk about the Cowboys getting humiliated by the Buffalo Bills. We've made it now about 5 minutes into the podcast, and I think it's time. They lost 31-10 in Buffalo on Sunday, and it was pathetic. Cowboys had 195 total yards on offense. Bills had 266 rushing yards. So on the ground, they outpaced the Cowboys total by, 70 yards? Josh Allen only threw the ball 15 times, and the Bills won by 3 touchdowns, which is just absurd. Hello?
Go to 1-800.
This game was pathetic. And to be honest, it gave me flashbacks to that 2019 divisional round loss against the LA Rams, where the Rams ran it 48 times for 273 yards and 3 touchdowns with CJ Anderson and Todd Gurley. And I remember feeling helpless watching that game play out 4 years ago because the Cowboys couldn't stop the rushing attack. It was awful because as just a spectator, you knew what the Rams were going to do, and you knew the Cowboys knew what the Rams were going to do, and they couldn't stop it. And that feeling of hopelessness was very similar to how I felt on Sunday watching the Cowboys against the Bills. Every person in the stands, everyone watching at home, everyone on the Cowboys side, everyone on the Bills side, Connor Stallions with Michigan, everyone knew that Buffalo was going to be running the football, and there was nothing the Cowboys could do to stop it, which it was pathetic. I'm not surprised the Cowboys lost. I even picked the Bills in my weekend preview in the Substack. So the fact the Cowboys lost this week did not surprise me. If you think about the fact that Buffalo needed this game, they pretty much need every game from here on out in order to get into the playoffs. And they needed this game, and it was at home. And we all know the splits for the Cowboys, home versus on the road this year. It does not surprise me that Buffalo won. What surprised me was the fact that this Cowboys defense that has been, for the most part, top 5 all year, showed a very, very big weakness. And it showed a weakness that I think is a personnel weakness, which is terrifying because I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how they are going to stop the run in the playoffs, because that's what this comes down to. And you think about this Cowboys defense, we love the pass rush. We love how the Cowboys defense attacks opposing quarterbacks, but Sunday showed us a personnel deficiencies up the middle, whether it's from a player standpoint, where it's the fact that we haven't really invested draft capital in the interior defensive line. I think they tried to fix that this past year. And I think Cowboys have been hoping that first round draft pick Mozzie Smith would have progressed further along than he has so far this year. I'm not going to say that pick was a bad pick, but I think they were hoping for more than what they've gotten from Mozzie Smith so far this year. I think it's also an injury discussion. You look how the Cowboys have lost Leighton Vander Esch, linebacker, for the rest of the season. And say what you will about the guy. The dude is good at stuffing the run. He's good at filling up those interior gaps and keeping a running play to a 2-yard gain instead of a 7-yard gain. And they don't really have that. I mean, the linebackers that the Cowboys have been rolling out there are good in pass protection. They're not big bodies. They're not able to kind of fill those gaps. And I think that's what's worrisome. And to me, this, like most things, comes back to the 49ers. They're the best team in the NFL, certainly the best team in the NFC. And if the Cowboys want to win the Super Bowl, if the Cowboys want to get to an NFC championship or get to a Super Bowl, that road goes through San Francisco. It doesn't go through Philly. Philly doesn't scare me. It doesn't go through Detroit. Detroit doesn't scare me. It goes through San Francisco, which is where the Cowboys season has gone to die for the past 2 seasons. And based on how Buffalo ran the ball against Dallas, we might be seeing a three-peat right before our eyes. So it's very worrisome, especially with the San Francisco rushing attack. If that's the matchup in the playoffs, that is going to be extremely problematic for the Cowboys. Talk about the 49ers here for a second. They won this past weekend, beating the Cardinals 45-29. I mean, it looks like Purdy's probably running away with this MVP award. He's such a hard quarterback to evaluate because he makes all the right decisions, but if Purdy was on, pick some bottom dweller, if he's on Carolina this year with the situation Bryce Young has had, are we feeling anywhere close to as good about Purdy? And to me, it's not an entirely fair argument because so much of how these players, like so much of what dictates a player's success in the NFL is situation, is coaching, is the surrounding pieces on the roster, everything like that. I mean, we're seeing Patrick Mahomes this year have his worst year from an efficiency standpoint of his career, and it's because of his surrounding cast. It's not that Mahomes has just like fallen off a cliff. It's this, it's his situation. It's what's going on. So, with Purdy, he's a hard player to evaluate because he's in such a good system, because he has so many good pieces around him. And when a couple of those pieces went away, where they lost, Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel, they were 0-3. They lost 3 straight. So, I don't know. I look at this Niners team, and if they're healthy, they're the Super Bowl favorite, and there's a pretty clear gap between them and I would say even Baltimore. Like them and the second best team. It's San Francisco. They're in a tier of their own as long as their key players are healthy, and everyone else is vying for the second best team in the NFL, I think. All right, keeping it on the Cowboys-Bills game. That was a little tangent on the Niners. Let's talk about Buffalo for a bit. To me, I think they're the best. They're the second best team in the AFC behind the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're better than the Chiefs. I think they're certainly better than Jacksonville. I think they're better than Miami, who's in their division. Buffalo is, if they end up losing that division and being a wild card team, they're like the number one option for teams you don't want to face in the wild card round, because if they lose their division, they won't even be a 5 seed because they've lost so many games. I mean, right now, wake up this morning, the Bills are out of the playoffs. They're a 9 seed. Now, I think that's going to end up working itself out. But imagine you're Miami. You have this great season. Tyreek Hill's on the verge of 2,000 receiving yards. He probably won't get it now that he didn't play this last week with an injury. You win your division. I mean, you're feeling great. You got the 2 seed in the AFC, and you're about to have to go play Buffalo for a third time this season. Like, that's insane. But that might be where we're headed, because if Buffalo sneaks in as a 7 seed, they'll have a date with Miami that first round of the wild card round. So, or, you might get Mahomes versus Josh Allen in the wild card round. That's definitely a possibility. You might get Jacksonville versus Josh Allen in the Bills. So to me, I think they're the second best team. If you want like a long shot bet for a Super Bowl winner, or at least someone to come out of the AFC, I think it's Buffalo. Just from a value standpoint, I think it's got to be Buffalo there. And you look at the Bills, you look at the season that they've had. They fire their offensive coordinator, and now they've got Joe Brady calling plays up there. And the offense wasn't the problem before. It's not like the offense was terrible and now it's all fixed. Like, the offense was good. The offense was a top offense in the NFL, but it is different with Joe Brady. And I think it is more of a Super Bowl caliber offense now with Joe Brady. And I think it's the running game. I think it's the fact that they've unleashed James Cook and what he means to that offense. And they have opened things up in the running game. They've opened things up in the passing game, out of the backfield, the short game stuff. It's not all on Josh Allen. And that's the recipe for success. When you get into the playoffs, having, a top 5 quarterback is pretty much a necessity, but that can't be all you have. Mahomes, the Chiefs showed that in that Super Bowl loss against Tampa Bay a few years ago, where their offensive line was completely decimated, and Mahomes, as good as he wasn't able to get pretty much anything going offensively. The Bills, they look like they're getting hot at the right time, and they look like they're going to be a really, really hard out in January. All right, staying in the AFC, let's go on to the other coast, or at least the other time zone, since Buffalo's not on the coast. They're right up there next to Niagara Falls. But the Chargers, this feels like, it was a while ago, because it was in the NFL terms. They fired head coach Brandon Staley and GM Tom Telesco after losing in Thursday Night Football 63-21 against the Las Vegas Raiders. How enticing is this job? The head coaching job, the GM job. How enticing is it being one of the lead guys for this LA Chargers team? Let's talk about some of the details. The Chargers are currently $45 million over the cap for 2024. That's not good. That's like New Orleans Saints level of being over the cap. But here are the cap savings if they cut the following players. These are the top 4 players by a cap hit in 2024. And then this is the cap savings they would get if they ended up cutting any of these players. Khalil Mack, $23 million. Joey Bosa, $14 million. Keenan Allen, $23 million. Mike Williams, $20 million. Keenan Allen's the best one out of that bunch. $23 million is a significant amount of savings. He's probably the guy who's least likely to get cut out of those 4 because of the fact that he has a good, connection with Justin Herbert. He honestly, for the most part, has been very reliable. If they were to cut all 4 of those players, the Chargers would now be $30 million under the cap. So they'd have $30 million of cap space. So you're talking about a $75 million swing on their cap from cutting those 4 players. If they lose out the rest of the season, they'll end up with a top 10 pick. I think right now they would pick 8th. So if they lose their remaining 3 games, you're looking at a top 10 pick. They have all of their picks in 2024. Oh, and by the way, they have their franchise quarterback locked up for the next 6 years. And he's a bona fide top 5 quarterback in the NFL in Justin Herbert. Cap situation isn't great. The roster situation isn't great. If you look at this Chargers roster, what really gets you excited outside of Justin Herbert? There really isn't. I mean, the guys I just mentioned are old, probably past their prime. Keenan Allen, you could probably say, is still performing like he's in his prime, but Bosa hasn't been as dominant as he has been in years past. Mike Williams can't stay on the field. Khalil Mack definitely past what prime version of him was. But I think this Chargers job, whether it's for the head coach or the GM, is enticing because You have Justin Herbert. How many job openings are going to come available for a franchise quarterback, a bona fide top 5 guy? You could talk about Doug Peterson with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I love Trevor Lawrence, good player. He's not top 5 yet. You could talk about Mike McCarthy with Dak. I am as big of a Dak Prescott fan as anyone. He has played like a top 5 quarterback this year, but I don't think that we would say going forward, you would project him out to be a top 5 quarterback for the next, 5 to 7 years, because you've got Burrow, you've got Mahomes, you've got Allen, you've got Herbert, you've got Lamar. I just named 5 right there at the top of my head. So these job opportunities are rare. And big part of me wonders, like, what if Sean Payton just stayed in the booth or stayed, on TV one more year? What if he turned his 1 year off from coaching into 2 years off? He'd be a no-brainer here. Like, he would be the number 1 candidate they would consider for this job. And now he's got to figure out what he's doing in Denver. But I think this Charger situation is going to be interesting to follow. I don't know if it's going to be someone like, Ben Johnson from Detroit, the stud offensive coordinator. I know Rosie would be sad to see him leave the Lions, although Rosie does love Herbert, so maybe he wouldn't be that bummed about it. But just something to monitor, especially as we kind of talk through kind of the big offseason storylines for some of these teams. Speaking of Rosie's Lions, big stock up for them this week. Nice win over the Broncos on Saturday night. I still don't see their ceiling as anything higher than winning 1 playoff game. Sorry, Rosie. I think they're good enough to win a home game in the wild card round, but they're not good enough to go on the road, I think, in the playoffs. That defense is still suspect for me. It seemed like, the offense was just humming on Saturday. It was not a good game from Denver, but still a good win. You like to see a team like that right the ship. They had been, kind of reeling there over the last few weeks. So to see them get back on track is definitely good to see. And, I don't want to sound like I'm dogging on the Lions. Teams getting to the NFC Championship, that's a tough task. And if they win a playoff game, this season's going to be a massive, massive success. I mean, what 1 playoff win is going to mean for that franchise, for those fans, like for the players, for Dan Campbell, it's going to be huge. So it was a good win from them. And then also stock up for the Bucs this week. Nice win in Lambeau on the road against Green Bay. I have a call from Alex that he wanted me to pass along to the listeners. And that is that Baker Mayfield's going to win a playoff game this year. I wouldn't go that far because if the Bucs win the division, they'll likely be matched up against the Cowboys in the wild card round. And I like the Cowboys' chances in that game. Yes, it would be in Tampa Bay. I just think the Cowboys are more talented, and Tampa Bay doesn't have that kind of rushing attack that scares you. But still, good call from Alex. It's spicy. I like it. And I don't hate the confidence because Baker has played very well this year. He was exceptional on Sunday in Lambeau. I would say that's the best game of his of the season, certainly, and one of the best games of his career, I would say, from a statistical standpoint. An EPA plus completion percentage over expectation. Basically what this is you take your EPA per play and you add in what your completion percentage over expectation, which is like how accurate are you as a passer? How much better are you at completing your passes and what, all the analytics would say that you should be completing. He was first in this category among all QBs in Week 15. He threw for 381 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the Bucs really seem like they have found an identity on offense. And that identity, sometimes simpler is better, and that's definitely what's happening in Tampa Bay. When they run the ball, they only use Rachaad White. He's their best running back, and so he's all they use. And when they throw the ball, pretty much Baker only throws it to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, especially if you look over these last 3 weeks, which they're on a 3-game winning streak. Almost 60% of Baker's pass attempts are going to either Evans or Godwin. And it's kind of similar to what the Cowboys have done after their bye, where they basically said, hey, let's just get the ball to CeeDee Lamb. He's our best player. Let's design the whole offense around letting Dak Prescott throw the ball to CeeDee Lamb. And it's crazy what the success they had. It seems like that's what they're doing in Tampa. And that's a big part of why the offense has been humming. But big credit to Baker. He's been great. A good win against what looked like a frisky team in Green Bay. I wrote in the Substack that matchup was basically, how did I phrase it here? Hold on, let me go to that game. When I previewed the Bucs Packers, I said I suspect both of these teams are fraudulent, but we'll know for sure about one of them after Sunday. Now we know. Buccaneers are not fraudulent. Packers are. Case closed. All right. Next one on the docket. Real quick, Chiefs bounce back versus Patriots. I'm not going to talk a lot about the game, but I do want to talk about this. Are the Chiefs going to do it again? Because around this time last year, around this time the year before, the Chiefs want to get us off their scent. You know what I mean? Like they kind of struggle a little bit, and you go on First Take, you go on, ESPN the next day, and it's the Chiefs are done. They can't win. Patrick Mahomes is not the top quarterback anymore. We need to be talking about, Joe Burrow or whoever. And then they get to the AFC Championship game. They get to the Super Bowl. They win a Super Bowl, whatever. They won last year without Tyreek Hill. Are they doing it again? Are they tricking us to get off the scent? And then they're just going to mess around and win the 1 seed? Get the 1 seed, host the entire playoffs in the AFC? Them getting the 1 seed is, it's a long shot, but here's how it would happen. The current top 3 in the AFC, Ravens are the 1 seed at 11-3. Miami is 2 seed at 10-4, and then Chiefs are 9-5. The Chiefs hold the tiebreaker over both the Ravens and the Dolphins. And assuming the Chiefs win out against their remaining 3 opponents, which are the Raiders, the Bengals, and the Chargers, the Dolphins' 3 remaining games are the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills. Let's say the Dolphins lose one of those games. Now the Chiefs have the tiebreaker over the Dolphins, and they're the 2 seed. The Ravens' 3 remaining games are the 49ers this week, the Dolphins the following week, and then the Steelers. So what would need to happen is the Chiefs would need to win out. The Dolphins would need to lose 1 game, preferably this Sunday against Dallas. And then the Ravens would need to drop 2 to the 49ers and then either the Dolphins or the Steelers. Again, it's a long shot, but it might happen, and we might have to go another year of saying Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff game, which is just absurd. All right, real quick on the Ravens. They won convincingly against Jacksonville, and I'm ready to just get off Jacksonville. I wanted to believe in them, but they had me fooled. I don't think they're very good. They're probably a first-round exit in the playoffs. They might win a wild card game, but I just don't trust them. You watch that offense, and it's just. I talked about how the Bucs have an identity. It does not feel like the Jags have an identity. And you can't be saying that with 3 weeks left to go in the regular season. On the flip side, the Ravens, they're the best team in the AFC. I said the Bills were the second best. That's behind Baltimore. The Ravens and Lamar have been exceptional. And I want to give some credit to Lamar because he has gotten scrutiny in the past. He had the awesome season in 2019 where he was unanimous MVP. He's had some playoff duds. But what he has done this year with all the injuries has been it's his best. This is more impressive than whenever he won the MVP. He's run for 740 yards on the ground. He's passed for over 3,100. And he's been doing it with a revolving door at running back. Whether it's Gus Edwards or Keaton Mitchell or J.K. Dobbins early in the year or Justice Hill, Melvin Gordon. I mean, they have had a revolving door at running back, but they're still one of the top rushing offenses because of him. They've had inconsistency at the wide receiver position or just pass catcher position because what we've always said is, you take Mark Andrews out of that offense and Lamar Jackson struggles. Well, he's been out of the offense and Lamar Jackson has still looked awesome. He's been doing it with Isaiah Likely, with a rookie Zay Flowers, who's been great, with Odell Beckham kind of picking and choosing which weeks he's going to, be an actual threat. And I think this season has been so impressive to Lamar. And I think if Lamar had more of the counting stats, he would be the MVP favorite. He might still get it, especially if the Ravens are a 1 seed in the AFC, but it'll probably go to Purdy at this point. But Lamar has been so good, and I feel better about this Ravens team than I ever have since he's been there. And if I needed to pick a team to come out of the AFC, it's going to be Baltimore, and I don't even have to think very long about that one. All right, I think that's it for the NFL. I promised you some other sports talk from me tonight. Let's start with the Mavs, and then we'll get to the Rangers offseason. So Mavs are 16-9. They're playing tonight. So by the time you hear this, you'll already know the result of that game against Denver. I'm going to go ahead and predict the future and say they are going to lose against the Denver Nuggets with no Derek Lively at center. They're just going to be overmatched. And let's see, Denver's a 7.5-point favorite. Yeah, give me the Nuggets in that one. I'd love to see the Mavs pull off the upset. I just don't see it happening. But they're currently dealing with several critical injuries. Derek Lively is going to miss a game with a left ankle sprain, like I already mentioned. Kyrie Irving's going to miss his 5th consecutive game with a right heel contusion. And Kyrie and Lively are the second and third most important Mavericks behind Luka. Speaking of Derek Lively, the immediate impact that he has shown this season has shown us how thin the Mavs are at center outside of him. Like, their plan at center was hoping that their rookie center was going to be awesome. And luckily for us and for the Mavs, their rookie center has been awesome. But with him off the floor, you realize just how thin their other options are, and how they can just get bully balled by the opposing bigs. I'd love for the Mavs to go get a legitimate backup center at the deadline. I'm not holding my breath. I know there was a report that, they're interested in Isaiah Stewart. He'd be fine, but he's a small center. I don't know if he solves the problem. Like, I want someone physically bigger. But, knowing me, I'll probably talk myself to Isaiah Stewart, or if they, trade a 2nd-round pick for him or something. Let's talk about Luka, because he's the MVP of the season if it ended today. What he has done with all the other injuries, he's averaging 32, 8, and 9 on the season. Most efficient shooting season from him that we've seen in his short career. Since becoming a dad 10 days ago, he's averaging, or not 10 days, like 2 weeks ago, he's averaging 36, 9, and 12 in 7 games. And I talked about how, they've had guys in and out of the lineup with injuries. Here are games missed by some of the other top Mavericks. Kyrie's missed 8 games. Tim Hardaway Jr. has missed 3 games. Grant Williams has missed 3 games. Josh Green has missed 7 games. Derek Lively has missed 2 games. I said their record at the top, 16-9. They played 25 games. And from those 5 players, let's see, you missed 10 combined games from Kyrie and Derek Lively, and then another 13 games from Tim Hardaway Jr., Grant Williams, and Josh Green. Like, those were supposed to be the contributors this year. And Luka's doing it all anyways. And he deserves so much credit for how good he's been. Night in and night out, not taking games off. I believe he's played every game this year except for the one game when his child was born. Him and his fiance finally gave Devin Booker a sibling, which was really nice of them. But he missed 1 game for that, and then he was back the very next game. He doesn't deserve all the credit, though. He deserves a ton, but not all of it, because some of the credit belongs to none other than Dante Exum. So he can shoot now. I don't know if you knew that, but Dante Exum, he can shoot now. He was a 5th overall pick by the Jazz in the 2014 draft, right out of high school from Australia. He was drafted because he was crazy athletic, could finish at the rim, play defense, handle the ball, whatever. Basically, he could do everything except shoot. And the Jazz, any other NBA team who would have drafted him, because like I said, he was a 5th pick, so he was a lottery pick if the Jazz didn't take him. They were all banking on him learning how to shoot. Tell me if you've heard that before. He never really learned how to shoot in the NBA, and that's why he didn't last long. Every season of his NBA career up to this point, he never shot over 35% from 3, which you can't do, especially if you're supposed to be a shooter, or if your team wants you to be a shooter. You can't shoot sub 35% from 3. So he's out of the league, goes over to Europe, plays overseas for 2 seasons over in the Euro League, and the Europeans taught him how to shoot. Credit to them. They did something that we could not. They took the little Australian under their wing. They taught him how to shoot. In those 2 seasons when he was in the Euro League, he shot almost 47% from 3. And this season, he's like close to 50%. It's absurd. He was crucial in that big game against the Lakers, where he had like 7 threes against the Lakers. It was ridiculous. Let me pull up his 3-point percentage. 42.9% from 3 on 2 attempts per game. Now that number has been going up recently. He's been on a hot streak. I don't think he's going to continue to make 7 threes a game. That's absurd. But he has been a legitimate offensive force on this team. So much so that if you look at all the 5-man lineups that the Mavs have run this season, with a minimum of 5 minutes played together, the top 5 in offensive rating all have Dante Exum in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The highest offensive rated lineups that the Mavs have played this year all have Dante Exum in it. That is not a coincidence. That is because you know what? I need to give my friend Alex, co-host of the show, some credit for this, because he said this to me. We were texting back and forth during one of the Mavs games, and he said Dante Exum is who we wanted Josh Green to be. We thought we had a nice 3-and-D wing Australian who was going to be a critical part of this Mavs team. But we got the Australian wrong. Thought it was going to be Josh Green. It's been Dante Exum so far this year. Expectations for the Mavs for just this season in general, I think they're a frisky playoff team. Do I think the Mavs are going to win the title? I don't. It'd be cool if they did. I didn't think the Rangers were going to win the World Series, and they went out and did that. So, anything can happen, especially when you have a guy like Luka Doncic. Literally anything can happen. I don't think they'll win the title. I'll be surprised if they do, but I think they could win a playoff series. I think they can make it to the second round, maybe even flirt around with a Western Conference Finals if, everything breaks right. But what we need to see from them is we just need to see growth. We need to see the foundation being built to go build a championship contender. And if that happens, I'll consider this season a success. Speaking of teams that just won a championship, let's talk about the Texas Rangers. We'll end the show with the Rangers here. Talk about some of the headlines of the offseason. We'll go most recently and work our way back. Max Scherzer had back surgery. He had a herniated disc, and he's not going to return until June or July. That's bad. That is not ideal. That means Mavs are going to, or not the Mavs, sorry, the Rangers are going to be relying on no Max Scherzer for at least the first 2 months of the season, maybe the first 3 months of the season, maybe a little bit longer. In other injured pitchers news, the Rangers signed starting pitcher Tyler Mahle. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation there. But they signed him. 2-year deal worth $22 million. He is recovering from Tommy John surgery. So he will be ready around the time Max Scherzer is going to be ready, June or July. And so if you look at the Rangers rotation, let's say they don't re-sign Jordan Montgomery. Let's say they don't sign any other starting pitchers. Their starting rotation to start the year will be, in some order, Nathan Eovaldi, John Gray, Andrew Heaney, Dane Dunning, probably Cody Bradford. You feel okay about that. Eovaldi should be able to carry the load. John Gray can be a really good pitcher. Andrew Heaney can show flashes. And Dunning and Bradford you feel good about, as nice young guys. It's not a great strategy if that's your 5-man rotation for the first 2.5, 3 months of the season. But if you look at the Rangers and you think, okay, if we can just weather the storm until the All-Star break, you get to the All-Star break, you get Male back, you get Max Scherzer back, you might even get Jacob deGrom back, and you're basically banking on one, maybe two of those guys being really good for the second half of the season. If that's the plan, okay. I'm on board with that. I don't think they're done. I think they're going to go out and get someone else. Montgomery is probably going to be priced out from returning to Texas. A lot of that has to do with the TV rights situation with Bali, with the parent company in bankruptcy, and the Rangers having uncertainty about where those broadcast right fees are going to be coming from, because that's a huge source of income for the Rangers on a year-to-year basis. I do think that whole uncertainty is affecting the way they're going to be spending this offseason. But I'm not expecting the Rangers to spend the way that they have the past 2 years. It's unsustainable. Also, they don't need to spend like they have the past 2 years. They've got, I would say, 95% of their roster shored up. They need like one more starter, 1 to 2 more relievers, and they're good. That's it. So I'm okay if they try to kind of work around the margins this offseason because of what they've done the past 2 years. Some other signings, they signed relief pitcher Kirby Yates to a 1-year deal. This was a signing I'm very excited about. I was looking at kind of his baseball savant page, some of his historical stats. He's going to be a nice pitcher for Texas, a good relief pitcher. And we know we need bullpen help, and he's going to be the bullpen help. His walk rate was high this past year. His strikeout rate was like 94th percentile. So he's got to get the walks down, but this was also like highest year of his career from a walk standpoint. So I'm okay with kind of banking on that regressing to the mean. But he 4-seam fastball, split finger slider, that's kind of his 3 big pitches. He's a really good reliever. And if you're telling me that the Rangers are going to have Yates, Sborz, and Leclerc as like your go-to 7, 8, 9 guys, and then you kind of fill in the rest of the gaps with, Jonathan Hernandez and some other guys in the bullpen, I'm okay with that plan as a bullpen standpoint. You can start with that for the year. If you feel like, by the trade deadline, the bullpen is a weakness, do what they did this past year. Go out and trade for someone. Go out and get in a role. Don't get a Aroldis Chapman, but go out and make a deal like that. So I like the Kirby Yates signing. I think it's going to be really good here. And I'm excited to see him with a T on his cap. I hit on Jordan Montgomery. I'd be surprised if he re-signed here just because of the uncertainty with Bally. Bally Sports giving us one more middle finger on the way out. Her and our off-season spending plans. Just got to love it. Hope that whole company burns to the ground. On that note, I think that's a good spot to end the podcast. Let's give you let's give you a heads up on the schedule for the next 2 weeks, because obviously we record on Monday nights. Podcast comes out on Tuesdays. If you haven't checked the calendar, next Monday is Christmas Day. The Monday after that is New Year's Day. Schedule for the next 2 weeks. We will have a special episode coming out to you mid-afternoon on Tuesday. So it won't be Tuesday morning. It'll be kind of early mid-afternoon on Tuesday. It'll be a very special episode. Got a recurring guest. Very excited to have them back on the show. It's been a while since we had them on the show, but It was a lot of fun whenever they were here. So we've got a very special guest coming on the show next week. And then the first podcast of 2024 will be on January 2nd. So we will record that Tuesday. We'll try to have the podcast out to you as soon as possible. You might not see it in your feed until Wednesday morning. It'll be a regular NFL podcast talking about, everything leading up to week 18, what's got to happen with all the playoff predictions and things like that. So that's how the next 2 weeks of Making the Call are going to go. We'll still have our Friday newsletters like we always do. So you'll see another one this upcoming Friday. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Making the Call. I will do the dad joke for you this week, and we'll do Christmas themed. What's the difference between the Christmas alphabet and the ordinary alphabet? The Christmas alphabet has no L. All right. Thank you to everyone who listened to this week's episode. Thank you to Liquid IV for sponsoring this week's episode. Go try Liquid IV today. Use code MTC for 20% off anything you order. We will see you this Friday on the Making the Call Substack for the Friday football newsletter. We'll see you next Tuesday for a special Christmas edition of Making the Call. I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas. Hope you're able to spend time with family and friends and just really reflect on this season. If you're a Christian like me, the significance of this Christmas season, it can't be overstated. And I hope you're just reflecting on that night 2,000 years ago when Jesus was born. And it's really, really easy to get sped up this time of year, whether it's the hustle and bustle with, gifts or going to all the different Christmases, making all the plans, doing all the dinners, doing all the baking, whatever. Like it's very easy to get sped up. But I do hope and pray that if you're listening to this, you do just slow down, reflect on what the Christmas season is truly all about. And if you don't really know what it's all about, but you would like to, my DMs are open. Reach out. Let's talk about it. I'd love to talk about it. I know Austin would, with him being a pastor. We all would love to talk to you about that. So DMs are open. I'm AS Robertson 12 on Twitter and Instagram, or you can, reach out to the Making the Call Twitter or Instagram, which is Making the Call 1. But Christmas season is a very, really, really special time. And I hope everyone can enjoy it. I hope everyone stays safe. Everyone has a very Merry Christmas, and we will see you next time.